There's a thin, almost fragile line between the ordinary and the terrible. Most nights, we live on the ordinary side, coffee mugs cooling beside us, mail waiting in the box, faces we recognize through windows that promise safety. But one night every year when we invite strangers to our doors, with little plastic pumpkins and the promise of candy that line thins, we decorate the ordinary with fake webs and carved smiles, and we welcome masks into our neighborhoods. It's a night built on trust. We call it Halloween. For some people, that trust becomes a vulnerability. For some predators, it becomes a timetable. Tonight, I'll tell you 3 true stories, each one stitched to Halloween, that feel like they were written for the movies, but are not. They are crimes. They are real. And in every one, the predator was arrested. I will ask you to sit with the quiet details, to listen closely to the sound between breaths where fear hides before it has a name. Because the truth is, horror doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it stands across the street, perfectly still, waiting for you to notice. The monsters in these stories don't vanish at dawn. They live next door. They rent the basement. They wait behind a curtain you forgot to close. You'll hear about kindness mistaken for invitation, smiles that opened doors, routines that became roadmaps for the unthinkable. And as the stories unfold, remember this: terror doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles back. So turn down the lights. Let the room go still. Listen for the things that only move when you stop moving. Because tonight, the stories aren't about ghosts. They're about people and the shadows they leave behind. Every act of evil begins with patience. Every nightmare starts as something ordinary. We begin in Pennsylvania. The Watcher at the Window. There's a house on Maple Hollow Drive in the quiet outskirts of Marion, Ohio. The kind of place that could be printed on a postcard: white siding, green shutters, a porch swing that creaks when the wind runs through, a mailbox with a red flag raised proudly each morning. It's the kind of house you pass without a second thought. You assume whoever lives there has a calm, ordinary life. Her name was Elena Morrow, 52 years old, divorced, no children. She worked remotely as a proofreader, spent her days among coffee cups, crossword puzzles, and a jungle of houseplants that leaned toward the sunlight like quiet companions. To her friends, she was gentle, a believer in good people and small kindnesses, until October of 2022, when her belief in goodness began to rot. October 3rd, 10:47 p.m. Elena was washing dishes when she saw it, a shape beyond the tree line behind her yard. Motionless, just standing there. The porch light flickered across the kitchen tiles, and in the window's reflection, the silhouette appeared to move. When she turned to look again, it was gone. She laughed it off, told herself it was a trick of the night. October 4th, 9:12 p.m. She saw him again, this time farther back at the edge of her property. A long frame, shoulders squared. The air outside was perfectly still, but she felt a current of static crawl down her neck. She texted her friend Clara. "Someone's outside again." "Might be kids," Clara replied with a smile emoji and said, "It's Halloween month." Probably just teens messing around, but night 3 changed everything. October 5th, 10:18 p.m. The figure was closer, half hidden behind the maple tree. Elena could see the shape of his jacket, the tilt of his head. She froze halfway through drawing the curtains. The moment stretched and thickened until even her heartbeat felt like noise. When she blinked, the figure vanished again, but she knew what she'd seen. By October 6th, the watching became routine. She would glance at the window every few minutes, waiting. That night, while steeping tea, she looked up, and the man was 3 feet away, standing on the other side of the kitchen glass. No features, just the oval of a head and a dark coat absorbing the porch light. The steam from her cup trembled in her hands. She backed away step by step until her heel hit the hallway rug. Then she ran, locked herself in the bathroom, sat on the cold tiles with the phone in her hand, whispering her own name just to hear something human. She didn't sleep until dawn bled through the blinds. When police arrived at 7:36 a.m., they found nothing. No footprints, no forced entry. They wrote a short report and left her with polite assurances. "We'll drive by for a few nights." But no one drove by. Here's what people don't understand. When someone watches you for days, they don't just watch. They study. They learn. The times you take out the trash. When your lights dim. The moments you disappear from every window. October 31st. They learn the rhythm of your Halloween night. Elena turned off her porch light early. She ignored the knocks from trick-or-treaters, muted her phone, and curled beneath a blanket. Outside, wind brushed dead leaves against the siding like whispers. She promised herself she wouldn't look out the window tonight. If she didn't look, maybe he wouldn't exist. Sometime between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., something entered her home. There were no broken locks, no shattered glass. The front door was found latched from the inside. When police discovered her body at 6:12 a.m., the morning light made the scene look deceptively calm. Her tea mug was still on the counter, the water in the kettle cold. The living room lamp burned softly. She had been strangled, no defensive wounds, no sign of struggle, as if she had known the person, as if she had opened the door herself. The case sat cold for 23 days. Then a neighbor, Doris Hanley, house number 412, turned over her doorbell camera footage. Most clips were routine, package deliveries, cats, the mailman. But when investigators scrolled back through late October, they found something else. A man, same jacket, same posture, standing outside Elena's house, motionless for minutes at a time, testing door handles, leaning close to windows. The timestamp read October 29th, 2:37 a.m., and then one final clip, a passing car's headlights illuminated his face for a fraction of a second. Pale, calm, ordinary. He was Jacob Rensley, a 34-year-old grocery delivery driver. He had delivered a single order to Elena's house on September 9th, 1 month before her death. Investigators found his fingerprints on her front porch railing and faint traces of soil matching his boot prints in the garden bed outside her kitchen window. When they brought him in for questioning, he didn't ask why. He just said, "She smiled at me." He told detectives he liked how open her house felt, that her voice sounded like someone waiting for company. That was it. A smile, a wave, a moment of kindness transformed into an invitation in the mind of a watcher. Jacob was charged with first-degree murder and unlawful entry. But some things didn't fit neatly into the report. The footage showed him outside the window at 2:37 a.m., 2 nights before the murder. But Elena's neighbor, Doris, swore she saw a silhouette pacing in the yard at 1 a.m. on November 1st, after Jacob had already been arrested. The camera didn't record that night the battery had died. Maybe she imagined it. Maybe the light was playing tricks again. Or maybe Elena wasn't the only one being watched. Because sometimes when people stare too long into the dark learns to stare back. Before we continue, if these stories have found their way under your skin, don't look away. Stay with us. Like, share, and subscribe so the next story that whispers in the dark finds you first. The Masked Man at the Bus Stop. It happened in Maple Grove, Oregon, a suburb so quiet you could hear the school bus from 3 streets away. The air in early autumn smelled of wet leaves and diesel fumes, the kind that clung to your jacket long after you'd gone inside. At 7:15 every morning, the children gathered at the same corner, Henderson and Willow Lane, zipped-up jackets, backpacks swaying, steam curling from their breath into the cold. And across the street, always in the same spot, stood a man, tall, thin, still. He wore a cheap white plastic mask, the kind you'd find hanging in the Halloween aisle of any store in America. Blank, expressionless. At first, the kids thought it was a prank, some local teen trying to be funny before Halloween. They whispered about him on the bus, joked that he was a ghost, a scarecrow, a mannequin someone forgot to take down. But the teachers noticed, the parents noticed, and soon the jokes faded. Because he didn't move, he didn't wave or follow or even flinch. He just stood there every morning at the same time, staring toward the children through that pale plastic mask. October 12th, 2021. A parent named Lauren Hayes called the local police. She told them about the man described the mask, the way he never spoke, how he stood across the street at dawn and again in the late afternoon. Officers drove by that afternoon, but the man was gone. No one filed an official report. By the next week, he was back. Children said he appeared just as the first bus arrived 7:14 sharp. His presence was almost ritualistic. He would remain there until the last child boarded, then simply turn and disappear behind the row of birch trees that lined the street. Then came October 30th. The air had turned bitter, the mornings dim. It was the day before Halloween, the kind of day when the sun seems to rise. Keene left her house at 7:03 a.m. She wore her navy jacket and carried a backpack stitched with patches of old cartoons. Her mother waved from the porch. It would be the last time anyone saw her alive. The bus arrived. Mara got on. Witnesses say she sat near the middle, headphones in, watching the world blur past. She got off that afternoon at 3:42 p.m. The stop was the same as always, Henderson and Willow Lane. Across the street, the masked man stood waiting. Neighbors later told detectives he was closer that day, not across the road anymore, but walking parallel to her just a few feet away, matching her pace. No sudden movement, no shouting, just walking. It was a quiet kind of horror, the sort that hides behind routine. A blank mask, a child, a sidewalk. Two figures that don't belong together. By 7 p.m., Mara hadn't come home. Her mother called her phone 12 times. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. At 8:19 p.m., she called the police. By midnight, every porch light in the neighborhood was on. Search parties formed, flashlights slicing through the dark. Volunteers combed the park, the drainage tunnels, the wooded ravine a half-mile from the bus stop. It was 4:26 a.m. when they found her. She was lying among the trees, her backpack still zipped, her shoes still tied. The medical examiner later said it was quick, no prolonged suffering, just the sudden closing of a life that had barely begun. The manhunt lasted 3 days. On November 2nd, detectives reviewed doorbell footage from a home on Willow Lane. At 3:47 p.m., the video showed Mara walking home, her ponytail swinging. 6 seconds later, the masked man appeared behind her. The camera caught only his reflection, the curve of a white mask turning toward her shadow. They traced the image to a resident named Gregory Shaw, age 37. He lived 3 blocks from the bus stop. No criminal record. A quiet man who worked at a local hardware store. When police entered his home, everything was in order. Dishes clean, bed made, nothing out of place. Except for one thing. Hanging on a nail in the hallway was a white mask. The same kind, smooth, cheap, plastic. When they brought Shaw in for questioning, he didn't ask what it was about. He didn't deny anything. His first words were, "I stood there every morning, waiting for someone to look back." He told detectives that he liked the silence, that the world only made sense to him when it was still, that Mara had smiled once, just once, when she stepped off the bus. He said that smile made him visible again. The confession was quiet, almost gentle. No remorse, no anger. Just a man describing a routine. Investigators found no trophies, no photos, no notes, nothing that explained why. The house was a study in normalcy, a television remote placed precisely parallel to the edge of the coffee table, a calendar marked only with grocery lists and weather notes. He lived alone. When asked why he wore the mask, he said, "It's easier for people to see what they expect to see." He was arrested on charges of abduction and first-degree murder. But some details never sat right. The doorbell footage showed the masked man's right hand scarred across the knuckles. But during interrogation, Shaw's hands were unmarked. Not a scratch, not a single wound. Neighbors swore they saw someone standing at the bus stop again, 2 days after his arrest. Same height, same stillness, same mask. Police dismissed it as hysteria. But there's a reason hysteria spreads. It's built on something that once was true. 1 week later, a new family moved into a house along Willow Lane. On their first morning, at 7:15 a.m., their son told them someone was standing across the street, watching the bus stop. When his mother looked, there was no one there, just fog and the slow crawl of the school bus turning the corner. That afternoon, she checked again, and in the reflection of the bus window, just for a second, she saw it. A white mask. Sometimes evil doesn't leave. It waits. It changes faces, changes streets, wears new shoes, finds new corners to stand on, and every so often it looks back, just to make sure you're still watching. If you've made it this far, you already know. The quiet ones hide the darkest truths. Leave a comment. Let us know which story haunts you most. And remember to subscribe, so you don't miss the next knock in the night. The Basement Tenant. Our final story takes us to Hillsboro, Illinois, a place of quiet cul-de-sacs and trimmed hedges where people wave without knowing each other's names. A house on Everett Street sat neatly among the rest. White siding, flower boxes, wind chimes that never seem to stop. The kind of house that looks calm on the outside and hides into a warm, lived-in home upstairs and a rented basement apartment below. Everyone knows a house like that. One side full of life and light, the other still and silent, existing just beneath it. The homeowner was Rachel Dyer, 47 years old, a single mother whose daughter had recently gone off to college. To help with the mortgage, she rented her basement to a man named Daniel Holt, 55, quiet, punctual, the type who nodded politely but never lingered in conversation. He paid rent on time, kept his space clean, and never caused a problem. At least, not the kind you could see. Neighbors said Daniel seldom left the basement. Some nights, when the windows fogged from the furnace heat, they swore they heard him whispering through the vents, not talking, not humming, but reciting, as if practicing a conversation that never came. Then came the knocking, soft, slow, deliberate. Not the knock of someone trapped or frightened, but of someone asking to be noticed. Knock. Pause. Knock. Rachel mentioned it once to a neighbor, laughing nervously. She said it was probably the pipes, or maybe Daniel working on something downstairs. October 30th, 2023. The air had turned brittle, the trees bare. Pumpkins glowed faintly on porches as the last of the children's laughter drifted through the streets. Rachel texted her daughter a photo of their carved jack-o'-lantern and wrote, "Quiet night here." Might watch a movie and call it early. It would be the last message she ever sent. Halloween night, 11:38 p.m. Neighbors later said they saw the light in Rachel's living room flicker twice, then go out completely. Some claimed they heard footsteps pacing above them, then silence. By morning, the newspaper still sat on her front step. The porch light was still on, and Rachel, who always opened her blinds at dawn, had not moved. When police arrived for a welfare check at 9:12 a.m., the front door was locked from the inside. They called her name. No answer. They forced entry. The house was still. Coffee cup on the counter, a blanket half folded on the couch. Only one sound, a faint murmuring, coming from the basement. Officers descended the wooden steps slowly, flashlights cutting through the dust. And there he was. Daniel Holt sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, Rachel's phone clutched tightly in his hands. His lips were moving, whispering to himself, voice low and rhythmic, as though repeating lines from a play only he understood. When they asked where Rachel was, he lifted his hand and pointed toward the furnace room. They found her lying at the bottom of the metal stairs, body turned slightly, as if she'd stumbled mid-step. No struggle, no blood. The medical examiner later ruled her death as asphyxiation rapid. It had happened quickly. There were no fingerprints besides Daniel's, no forced entry, no evidence of weapons. Just that whispering and what they later found scribbled on the walls of his basement room. Small lines of text written in pencil, phrases repeated over and over. They said, wait. They said, it's almost time. Halloween. The night the door opens, Daniel had no criminal record, no history of violence, no diagnosed disorder. His background check from the time of his rental showed nothing unusual. The neighbors described him as polite and boring. When detectives questioned him, his answers came like fragments of another person's thoughts. I was patient, he said. They've been telling me for years. The knocking wasn't me. It was them coming through the walls. He spoke of voices that lived in the vents, voices that told him to wait for Halloween, the night the mask of the world grows thin. No one ever identified who they were, no hidden group, no online community, no manifesto. Whatever lived in his head was private, insistent, and terribly persuasive. Police sealed off the basement. In their reports, they noted an unusual detail. The knocking sound continued even after Daniel's arrest. 2 separate officers heard it faint, rhythmic, coming from behind the furnace wall. They described it as 3 knocks, evenly spaced. The sound stopped when they tore open the drywall. Inside, there was nothing but insulation and dust. Some say the knocking was just the old pipes. Others believe Daniel wasn't lying about the voices. But whatever truth existed, it never made it to court. Daniel was found unfit to stand trial. He was committed to the Ridgeway Psychiatric Facility, where, according to staff, he rarely speaks. But once a year, on Halloween night, the nurses say he whispers through the vents the same words, the same rhythm. Knock. Pause. Knock. They said, wait. When investigators reviewed the 3 cases, Elena from Ohio, Mara from Oregon, and Rachel from Illinois, a pattern began. Each one watched. Each one rehearsed their act in silence long before it began. Elena's killer studied her from the tree line. The masked man shadowed the bus stop for weeks, and Daniel Holt sat below Rachel's feet, whispering to the air until something or someone whispered back. These weren't impulsive crimes. They were rituals built on patience, repetition, and quiet obsession. Predators don't always break in with violence. Sometimes they build a rhythm. They learn your schedule, your footsteps, the sound your house makes when you sleep. And when Halloween comes, when the world wears masks and strangers move freely, they don't need to hide anymore. Because on that night, the line between the living and the watching blurs, and the knocking you hear from the dark corner of the basement might not be the pipes. It might be someone who's been waiting all year for you to answer.